this is a big hot topic, honestly, and I think I actually saw a LinkedIn thread about this not too long ago. DIY investing, these investing apps, it's not really impacting the retirement like sector as much as it is the more like millennial demographic and the maybe Gen Z in there too. But it's really going to become more prevalent in the long term future, and I think it is the biggest threat that financial advisors face over the long run. And I say long run in the next 3 to 10 years plus. So, anyways, here's the question: do you have any tips on convincing traditionally DIY investors, or armchair advisors as you can call them, to work with a financial advisor? The DIY investors and the armchair advisors, they're a little different, but those who do their own investing strategies, they believe in what they're doing traditionally. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing them at all. So you don't ever want to go head on and combat them and tell them, do this instead, do that instead. The best avenue that I've seen to engage in conversations and ultimately drive a meeting with these DIY investors is to bring up taxes. Okay, tax planning. The higher the net worth, the higher the earnings, the easier the conversation is to generate around tax planning. In other words, if someone's getting tax refunds pretty consistently off their W-2 income, they're not going to really bite at that. But the ones who are having to consistently pay taxes, they're looking for tax minimization strategies, tax optimization strategies, etc. Tax loss harvesting is actually a really big one. Those are the ones that you can really drive a wedge with. So most investors, most DIY investors, most people in general don't understand taxes, especially not at the level that they need to understand them to be their own financial advisor. So until there's an app that comes out that does a really, really good job at this, at tax planning, that's going to be your wedge. Okay. The more you can engage with someone around tax planning, the more conversations will happen. It is much easier. Okay. Keep this in mind. Robinhood is probably, it is the most popular, I'd say, but you got Robinhood, for example. And I don't have anything against Robinhood, by the way. Robinhood pros and cons. Some of the pros are, as someone who invests on it or someone who could invest on it, it's a lot easier to invest money on Robinhood than it is to meet with a financial advisor 2 or 3 times prior to even doing any paperwork or opening a managed account with them. Okay, it's ease of use. Okay, it's much easier to do it yourself in 3 minutes than it is to meet with someone multiple times to figure out strategy, etc. As amazing as that second strategy is long term, it's the short-term satisfaction. We all succumb to it. It's the Amazon buy now button effect, right? We all fall in place for it. So we got to keep that in mind. It's easier for people to do that. It's also easier because there's no management fee. There is no fee that someone's paying. Now, sure, there's a margin, or sure, there's cuts taken out here and there. However, when you tell someone that you manage their money for X amount of fee, you might be the best in the world at managing this. And I would agree with most people when they say they're really good at managing money and they're smart, they're educated, etc. But you're not trying to convince me. You're trying to convince the DIY investor who uses Robinhood. They don't like paying the management fee. Okay. Now, you should never drop your fee, to be clear, but perhaps the conversation is that management fee, it's there because it saves you taxes. It saves you tax implications. Then the conversation is a lot easier. So, we also, to be clear, it's the day and age of instant information. You can give people logins to their accounts to look at things and figure out where their portfolio is at. Pardon me. You can give them all that, but there's just this appeal to unlocking your phone, clicking on the Robinhood app or whatever investing app, opening it up and seeing your exact balance to the moment. Okay, sure, markets close at a certain time, but still, you can see all that. The last piece of this that we got to remember to pay attention to when it comes to these investing apps, most investment options are going to be available to the general public. Every once in a while, you'll have these exclusive portfolio funds or these exclusive, offerings that you can provide. However, theoretically, 95% of investment options can be done through retail, through these kind of apps. And that's usually all people need. They just want to buy Disney. They're not trying to buy these different portfolio makeups that include Disney, the ETF models that are super selective and super proprietary and super well performing. They're going to go for more simple long-term, buy and hold strategy. Usually. So, all in all, like the reality is, if all you're doing is investing people's money and then managing it for them, again, you might be the best at this, but you're in for a rude awakening, because the financial apps will take your job away if you do not provide the value to the consumer that apps cannot. If you are leaning on the pillar of, hey, I get to know you and your goals, I'm a real human being, like, that's not going to be good enough. It's just not. Like, we've already converted to preferring to do more over Zoom than we do in person as a society. That right there is a big step forward to some, backwards for some. But if all you're doing is investing money and you're not tangibly, like through evidence, proven, providing value consistently, it's going to be a rough one. It's going to be a rough future. Like I said, for now, there's no great year-long tax planning app, at least that I'm aware of. And that's good for most advisors. When the time comes that there is an app created that does tax planning for you, and I mean more advanced stuff like potentially Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting strategies, like when that becomes real, that's where things are going to get tough. Okay. That's where things are going to get really tough for the advisors that don't stand out from traditional money managers. So again, those are a few tips and strategies on convincing DIY investors, but ultimately it does come down to the number one thing: talk about taxes, talk about tax planning. That is the best shot you have of driving the wedge immediately, because most people don't understand that at a high level. And if they're going to pay CPA, they might as well pay an advisor who wraps that into what they do.